Welcome to Scrum Masters Elite_UK. If you're interested in the Six Nations, Steve Borthwick, and an in-depth analysis of England's rebuilding journey, subscribe to the channel so we can dig deeper and look beyond short-term results. For me, England's extended training squad list for the Six Nations is far more than just a piece of sports news or a routine tactical breakdown. It clearly reflects the coaching philosophy, long-term vision, and internal tensions within English rugby's rebuilding process under Steve Borthwick. The more I analyze it, the more I sense an interweaving of hope and caution, innovation and continuity, trust in the system and anxiety over immediate results. First of all, what strikes me most is the way Borthwick has constructed a 36-man squad around the concept of balance, a keyword repeated not only in his statements but throughout the entire discussion. Balance between experience and potential, between the present and the future, between safety and risk. The inclusion of players such as Villa Casasella, Emmanuel Leogun, and Greg Fisselau shows that Borthwick is not afraid to open the door of the national team to new faces, provided they prove themselves at club level. Personally, I value this highly, because in modern rugby, locking the national squad to a familiar core often leads to stagnation and a lack of internal competition.
That openness, however, is not a loud or radical revolution. It is quiet, measured and controlled. Borthwick is not tearing everything down and starting again. Instead, he is carefully inserting new pieces into an already stable framework. Maro Itoje's continued captaincy is a clear example of this approach. To me, Itoje is not only an outstanding player technically, but also a symbol of resilience and discipline, qualities England desperately needs during this transitional phase. The presence of seasoned players such as Jamie George, Elliot Daly, and Luke Cowan-Dickey provides a sense of reassurance, like anchors that keep the ship steady while new ideas are tested. When it comes to the forward pack, my feelings are more complex. On one hand, I agree that England currently possesses a deep pool of talent in this area. The steady emergence of young players in the prop positions suggests that the development pathway is moving in the right direction. Names like Sailor and Iagun are not short-term sensations, but products of sustained, structured investment. This gives me optimism about England's long-term future, especially looking ahead to the 2027 World Cup. On the other hand, I cannot ignore the underlying concern about this group's lack of test-level experience. International rugby, especially the Six Nations, is a brutal environment, where psychological pressure can shatter the confidence of young players if they are not properly supported. While the article highlights their strong Premiership performances, the gap between domestic rugby and Test rugby remains significant. At this point, I believe the role of the coaching staff, particularly Scrum coach Tom Harrison, becomes absolutely crucial. Borthwick's comments about Harrison's meticulousness and deep understanding reassure me, as they suggest these selection decisions are anything but impulsive. What also stood out to me was the way Borthwick spoke about having already made contact and prepared replacement options. This reflects a modern management mindset, where the team does not simply react to injuries, but proactively plans scenarios in advance. As someone who has followed English rugby for many years, I have witnessed numerous occasions when the team found itself on the back foot due to a lack of contingency planning. Compared to the past, this approach feels far more professional and strategically mature. The discussion around potential changes in squad structure, particularly the use of a 6:2 bench split, gave me a lot to think about. Clearly, this approach played a significant role in England's autumn success. But rugby is not a sport where you can rely on a single formula forever. Borthwick's willingness to keep his options open suggests he is not trapped in a rigid philosophy. Personally, I rate this flexibility highly, because the Six Nations is a competition where each opponent brings a distinct identity that demands a tailored approach. I am especially aligned with the emphasis Borthwick places on the role of senior players in supporting and guiding the younger generation. In such a fiercely competitive environment, having figures like Ellis Genge or Jamie George not only perform well, but also serve as emotional anchors is vital. Here, I sense a positive team culture, one where competition does not destroy cohesion, but instead drives collective growth. This is not easy to build, and it is clear that Borthwick is making a conscious effort to achieve it. One of the most interesting sections for me was the analysis of England's emerging attacking identity. Historically, England have often been criticised for being overly pragmatic, lacking creativity, and relying too heavily on physicality. The renewed focus on ball control and backline flexibility signals a meaningful shift in mindset. The return of George Furbank, in my view, is emblematic of this direction. He is not just an individual selection, but a representation of the type of player England now seeks: versatile, tactically intelligent, and capable of linking play. When the Autumn Nations series is described as a demo for Lee Blackett's philosophy, I find that idea genuinely exciting. The suggestion that what we have seen so far is only the beginning, and that the Six Nations may be where the team truly commits, creates a sense of positive anticipation. At the same time, I remind myself that rugby is not a video game, where upgrading the system automatically guarantees success. Implementing a clear attacking identity requires chemistry, time, and patience, particularly when the squad itself is still evolving. It is impossible not to feel a sense of harshness and regret for the players who missed out. When I read names like George Hendy, Tom Pearson, or Afolabi Fasogban, I genuinely feel for them. These are not lesser players, they are simply part of an exceptionally competitive generation. In this respect, I feel both sadness for them individually and optimism for the broader state of English rugby. Having so many informed players unable to make the national squad is, paradoxically, a sign of a healthy rugby system. That health, however, also brings immense psychological pressure. Not every player has the resilience to cope with being left behind, even temporarily. I hope that the psychological support and career guidance systems within clubs and the union can help them maintain motivation. Ultimately, today's unselected players may well become tomorrow's key contributors, provided they continue to be nurtured and believed in. What I see in the current England squad is a group in the process of shaping its identity, taking cautious, but calculated steps forward. Steve Borthwick comes across as a pragmatic coach, detail-oriented and resistant to short-term hype. That may frustrate fans craving immediate fireworks. But for me, it represents the foundation required for sustainable success. If I had to summarize my feelings, I would say this squad does not promise a guaranteed Six Nations triumph, but it does promise a serious, deep, and coherent development process. And sometimes, in elite sport, faith in the path you are taking, rather than the immediate outcome, is the most valuable thing of all.
This is Scrum Masters Elite_UK's perspective on England's rebuilding process. If you enjoy my long-form, in-depth analysis, please subscribe. See you soon.